Let's take a look at area and perimeter. To start off, what is perimeter? Perimeter is the outline of the shape. It's the distance around the shape. So we have a square over here. And how would we find the perimeter of the square? To start off, here's the formula. Perimeter equals 4 times length. This is the formula because a square has 4 sides, and each of these 4 sides is equal to 1 length, which is why we multiply the length by 4. And when we input 4 into the formula, since each side length is 4, we get 4 times 4, which is 16 centimeters. So this means that the perimeter of this 4 by 4 square is 16 centimeters. Now let's move on to this triangle. The formula of a triangle is that perimeter equals side 1 plus side 2 plus side 3. All you have to do is add up all the sides in a triangle. So we have 5 centimeters plus 5 centimeters plus 4 centimeters, since the side lengths are 5, 5, and 4. And this gives us 14 centimeters, which means that the perimeter of this triangle is 14 centimeters. Now let's look at the perimeter of this rectangle. As we can see, this rectangle has a length of 6 centimeters and a width of 4 centimeters. To find its perimeter, we need to use the formula 2 length plus 2 width. This is because a rectangle has 2 lengths that are the same size and 2 widths that are also the same size. So if we take the width and multiply it by 2 and add it to the length multiplied by 2, then we get the distance around it, which is the perimeter. Anyways, as we are using this formula, we plug in the length and the width, and this gives us 2 times 6 plus 2 times 4. And then, once we evaluate it, we get 12 plus 8, and this gives us 20 centimeters. This means that the perimeter of this rectangle is 20 centimeters. This formula also applies to a parallelogram. Now let's take a look at area. Area is the space inside of a shape. So let's look at this 4 centimeter by 4 centimeter square. It has space inside of it. And to find that space, we would need to use this formula, length times width. So we know that this square has a length of 4 centimeters and a width of 4 centimeters. So we simply do 4 times 4. And this gives us 16 centimeters squared. Now one thing to note is that 2 right there squared is necessary, because a 2 indicates that this value is for area. Another way to look at it is to see that this square right here is made up of a bunch of little 1 by 1 squares. And each of these squares represents 1 centimeter squared. And since there are 16 of them, the area of this square would be 16 centimeters squared. This right here is a visual representation of area. Now let's look at a rectangle. The formula for a rectangle is the same as a square, length times width, except the only difference is that the length and the width are different lengths. So as we can see here, the length is 6 centimeters and the width is 4 centimeters. So we simply do 6 times 4, and this gives us 24 centimeters squared. And it tells us that this rectangle is made up of 24 1 by 1 centimeters squares. Now let's look at the area of a parallelogram. To find the area of a parallelogram, we need to use this formula, area equals base times height. Now in this case, the base is 10 centimeters, it's the line at the bottom, and the height is 7 centimeters, it's this dotted line, and this gives you 10 times 7, which gives you 70 centimeters squared. Now one thing to note for the area of a parallelogram is that these 2 diagonal sides are not used. Rather, the dotted line, the height, is used. So make sure you don't get the slants confused as the height. Now let's look at the area of this triangle. The formula for the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. So as we can see here, the base is 8 centimeters and the height is 6 centimeters, the dotted line. And this gives you 8 times 6 divided by 2. And then when we evaluate it, we get 24 centimeters squared. Now a question that may come to mind is that why are we dividing by 2? And to answer that, let's look at this triangle, but 2 of them, but one of them is upside down. It makes a parallelogram. And to find the area of a parallelogram, we know we have to do base times height. But since we're finding the area of a triangle, we must divide by 2, so we only get 1/2 of this parallelogram, which is a triangle, which is why we do base times height divided by 2. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below, and they will be answered as soon as possible.